Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello friends and welcome to another weekly wrap up and welcome to a mega wrap up here, okay? So this one is going to cover, honestly, the bulk of February here. Last weekend, as I know I've mentioned so many times, but I am so happy about it. This is going to cover basically 2 weeks of February here. It's going to cover from February 7th through today, the 21st. Because I was gone last weekend for my grandparents' 60th anniversary, which again, I've talked about plenty, but it just wouldn't have worked out for me to film my wrap up then. And so I have a whopping, I believe, 17 things to talk about today, which is going to be wild. I'm anticipating this being quite the long wrap up, and I do have kind of an interesting way I'm going to break it up, and I'll explain that to you, just because, well, I'll explain it in just a second. I just want to do my normal welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate y'all so much for being here. Thank you to all my channel members and patrons for everything you do to support me and what I do. And speaking of channel members, we have 2 new channel members to welcome for the very first time. We have Bronwyn Elizabeth and the Lonesome Sparrow, who have both joined channel memberships. So thank you both so much for supporting what I do here. I would not be able to full-time make YouTube videos and be a creator if it wasn't for people like you. So thank you so much. And you too, who's just watching this, you make this happen as well. Yeah, every bit of support makes this happen. So if you're enjoying this, or at any point during this video, if you like this or you comment on something that I have to say, it all helps just a little bit today. So now that I have said that, what do I mean about how I'm going to break this up? So what I mean about that today is that I read a lot of things. Like I said, I have what did I say, 17 things to talk about, and half of them are more Hollanov fics, okay? I was gobbling them down, okay? I enjoyed so many. So literally half of what I read was those fics. And the way that I'm planning to break this up today, because I realize that not everybody is here for those. I know a lot of you have been enjoying them because you've told me so. And you definitely have been expressing your enjoyment of them. But instead of talking about the fics in order of like, how they came along to, instead of talking about how the fics in chronological order of like how they came to me while I was reading other things, I'm going to talk about all the books I read in order of how I read them, and then I'm going to talk about all the fics in order of how I read them, okay? That's how I'm going to do this. Just because I know that the bulk of my audience isn't here for the fics, but I'm still going to talk about the fics because there's still things that I read. I still count those as read things, the same way I would count like short story, and not all of them are short. Some of them are the same length as books, in the way I've always counted fics when I read anything. But I just realized particularly for this, you know, which is a double-barreled wrap-up that has 17 items, when 8 of them are fics and 9 of them are books, I just realized that it'll probably be easier for everybody if I do it that way. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the 9 books that I read first, and then we'll switch over and do the 8 fics that I read. So, you know, that'll just be easier that way. But as always, I'll still have links to all of the books down below and links to all of the fics down below for you to get to them. So I just want to put that up front, just so you know that when I tell you that I read 8 fics, if you don't really care about those, then when we get to the end of the books, you'll just know that you can check out for the day if you don't want to. And if you're just really excited about the fics, you can just fast forward until I talk about those and dive right into those. But either way, thanks for being here. And we won't waste any more time. We'll get into it because, again, I have a feeling we're going to be here for a hot minute, no matter what order that I talk about everything in, because it was a hell of a lot. And it was a fun time either way, because oh boy, there was some good stuff in here. Okay, there was some good stuff. So I gotta gloss back up. I gotta take another drink, and let's dive in. All right. First up, though, I had a reread of Burned Dreams by Neva Altai. And this is book, luckily it says right here, this is book 7 in the Perfectly Imperfect series. And this was one that I will say, I know I say this whenever one of the rereads of these came up. I was looking forward to the reread. And as I have made my way through this series rereading it, there have always been parts of it where there were things that I forgot, or there'll be ones where it's like, oh, I forgot just how great this couple was or whatever. But this was one that I knew I was going to take a lot more out of this book, because when we would rank the books, this book and the first book in the series are probably ones that I would put at the bottom of my ranking. They were just ones I didn't connect with as much. Ones that I couldn't tell you more than probably the basic outline of what the book was about. Whereas with most of the other books in the series, even if I couldn't remember them perfectly, I probably remembered a few more key details of them than others. And this was one that, yeah, for sure, I did not remember much about this one at all, other than knowing that it was like a revenge and a bodyguard, and that the heroine is in a marriage she does not want to be in. So this is a forced marriage situation, but she's not married to the hero, whereas like pretty much all the other books in this series involve some form of like the hero being the one she gets married to, or the hero's the one who has taken her out of the situation. Now, it does still involve the hero being her protector, but he's actually supposed to be like protecting her on behalf of her horrible husband. Or so the husband thinks. Anyway, so this is Alessandro and Ravenna, aka Az's story. And one thing that I do really like about this is this book really does kick us into gear for the last kind of run of the series too, which actually includes like some of my favorite books in the series. I know I say that about all of them, but you know, when we talk about ranking, my 6-star books in the series are like coming up here. Like, you know, book 8, I give book 8 and 9, I believe I give them like 5 and 6 star. Like, I just love them so much. But in this one, we have Ravenna, who her brother got into some trouble with this absolute shithead, who forces Ravenna into marrying him. Now, the only thing is this perverted man, he has some impotency issues. And so he isn't able to consummate his marriage with Ravenna. But he does still kind of sexually torture and humiliate her. A lot of it out of anger, because he isn't able to consummate his marriage with her. And he forces her to dress a certain way and act a certain way in front of his father and of his men to make it seem like he's dominating her whenever he gets the chance. And so she's really kept in a very horrible way. He controls what she's allowed to eat. He controls what she's allowed to wear. And it's a very awful situation that she's in. And if any man looks at her or touches her at all, like at all, gently or kindly, he will off that person. And so she's actually went through a few bodyguards who haven't even been inappropriate with her, because her husband is so possessive. And now, I actually had a bit of a theory about this when I was rereading it too, where, you know, if her husband had a fear that if she were to have an affair with anyone, that they would find out that she wasn't sleeping with him, and that would cause problems for him. So he wanted to keep her so fearful in that way. But anyway, so Alessandro, it is believed actually that he is gay. That is something that's going around because he isn't known to have been sleeping with anyone. And that's actually how he gets picked for this assignment. But the real reason he isn't ever seen with anyone is that he's actually a widower. His wife is dead. And the reason his wife is dead is that Ravenna's creepy ass husband is and his like family is responsible for the death of Az's wife. And so he wants into this family, into this home to get revenge. And not only does he want to kill not only does Az want to kill this man, he wants to kill Ravenna to get full revenge for what happened to him. Now, he doesn't know that Ravenna is just as much of a prisoner as, you know, an innocent victim. He just knows that he wants to burn this guy's life down. And, you know, he will very soon come to know that she isn't someone that he needs to seek revenge upon. But he's going to have to, you know, figure that out as things go anyway, so we should say. But it is just absolutely gut-wrenching, the things that Ravenna is going through. And, you know, and because the fact that, you know, she doesn't know that Alessandro is there, the reasons that he's there, she just knows that anytime any of her bodyguards have shown any softness towards her at all, that they have been offed. So she also isn't going to let anything slip or show any, you know, softness towards him for fear for his life as well. You know, she doesn't have any reason to be like, you know, want to show any softness in that way, because, you know, she also doesn't want any more deaths on her hands, whether she likes her bodyguard or not. So it's just a very awful situation that she's in as well. So anyway, it is just a very sticky situation, but the more that Az observes, he obviously is no dummy, and he starts to realize that, oh, well, killing her, sure, that, you know, that might seem like that would get me the revenge that I want, but really I would just be taking a possession away from this man, and I would be harming this woman. Well, of course I would be, because I would be killing her. But, like, that wouldn't actually be getting revenge against this man. That would just be helping him perpetuate even more his abuse of her. So very dark. This one's very heavy. And again, you know, Az is a widower, so he has a lot of guilt and pain, too, about, you know, moving on. He very much blames himself for the death of his wife as well, and the business that he was in. And then through Alessandro, we also get our first hints at Kai, who I absolutely love that character. And we get hints at a rescue mission that needs to be undertaken to get him out of a serious situation that he's in at the end of this book, that is overlapping with his story that we'll come across later as well. So anyway, this was great to revisit. I did stick with my rating for this one of a 4, just because, like, it's really hard to rank this series as a whole, but I think it's still pretty strong. I think it's still really good. I just think in comparison with the other ones, I do still love a lot of the other ones more. But it's definitely not bad, and I definitely appreciated it more probably than the first time that I read it. I just think I still love a lot of the other ones even more than this one too. But in the same way that I appreciated Painted Scars more when I actually reread it, I felt that way about this one too. I think this whole series is just so strong. Like, I think Neva does such a good job of getting into complex things, though that's actually one of the darker ones in my opinion, especially with her being, you know, currently still married to that twisted fucker at the start of this. So that's a 4-star for me and a 3 on the spice scale. There's definitely some twisted things going on there. Okay, another reread. There was a few rereads going on because I was, of course, behind with some January Patreon ones here. So I actually reread The Tyrant, Alpha's Rejected Mate by Kate C. Wells. One of my patrons wanted me to reread a couple books by her for them. And so this is the first book in the 5 Packs series, which this was really interesting to revisit, especially after reading Silent Lies, which was a 6-star read for me in January. And just remembering the way that Casey Wells does angst was crazy. And I will say, it didn't tear me up quite to the same level as it did the first time I read this. And again, after reading Silent Lies, which is just a whole different level of angst and just absolute agony, this one didn't tear me up quite to that same amount, but it still is just so painful. And so in this one we have Una and Killian, and it actually begins like, there's just so much to explain with this, and I don't want to spend too much time because, again, we have so many books to get through today. I cannot be this way, and this is a reread as well, so I need to be on it. But we get it's tough too because this is the first book in this series, and like I've read all the books in this, and I will be rereading book 2 in this series as well shortly. But we have Killian, who is the alpha, and he has the title says a Tyrant alpha, and he has made a lot of changes in this pack since he became the alpha. His sire was not a great leader of these people, and so he's made a lot of changes, but it still is a very sexist and kind of backwards way that things are done. And then we have Una, who she is actually there's no real great way to say it. She's kind of a partially disabled part of the pack, and she hasn't been able to shift into her wolf self. So that also puts her very low on the totem pole. She's a part of these kind of like the unmated females, and she's seen as very low in the pack. And so her job is to kind of like be a part of like the kitchen staff, be a part of these females who are supposed to kind of do this menial type of work. And one day during some of her tasks, she's supposed to be like handing out food, something happens where for real, one of the other females is kind of like, it's so weird to describe this, but this other female is making a move on Killian, let's just say, and it's one of these females that has actually done some sexual favors for Killian before, and for some reason this day, the wolf inside Una decides that is her mate, and that's enough, and had enough, and the wolf decides to come out. And this is a horrible place for this to happen. It is not the right time for it to happen because she has challenged this other female in front of everyone, has staked a claim on the alpha in front of everyone, and she is the weakest female there. Even in her wolf form, her wolf is very weak. She's never fought anyone before. She is disabled, and she has made herself known there, and she literally gets beat. And if Killian hadn't made a distraction there, she probably could have been chomped right then. But instead, she ends up getting thrown out in the garbage heap. And Killian's wolf isn't happy about this, but Killian the man is very confused about why this, I keep saying it, but this wreck of a woman and a wolf is trying to lay claim on him. This is not how things are done. This is all fucked up. But there's an instinct in him that says, no, this is right. And so this is why this is so hard to explain, because once you get into this series, you will start to see these things of like the wolves know, the instinct of the wolves know, which is in a lot of paranormal stories. It really is. But as you will learn through the 5 packs, which again, I've read all the 5 pack stories. The way it's different in each of the 5 packs as we get to know them. But in some of the packs, their wolves have been pushed down more than others, and they have let human ways overtake them more than others. And even in a pack like this pack, where they think their wolves, they're more in tune with their wolves than they are missing the point completely of a lot of things, and not following their instincts. But when they will let their wolves out and their wolves take control, things just fall into place so much easier, and things go the way that nature intends them to, without the human mind getting in the way when instinct can rule. But we're far, far away from that happening. And even when things start to get into place, like Una the human, she is absolutely devastated and humiliated by what happened to her in front of the pack, and it is absolute agony to have been rejected by her mate in front of everyone. It physically makes you ill. And so there is a witch woman who agrees to remove the bond from her so she doesn't have to feel the pain of the bond anymore, because it will drive her insane. It can make you moon mad. And so for her to not be in pain because of this rejection that she got from Killian in front of everyone, this witch woman agrees to remove the bond from Una, but it wasn't removed from Killian. And so not only will Killian have to come to terms with the fact that he rejected his mate and humiliated her, and his wolf is demanding that he claim his female, he still has the bond within him, but his female, who's been humiliated and rejected, she no longer has the physical urge to have to do anything that he wants, which leads to him having to do some old-fashioned convincing that normally the wolves don't have to do because their bodies just urge them to be together. So that's just the setup, okay? I promise. That's a setup. And that's the kind of angstiness and things that can happen. And there was a reason why the Tyrant Alpha's rejected mate really caught on with a lot of people. And I had given that actually a 4.5 the first time I read it. And I bumped that up to a 5 this time around, because now knowing where the whole thing goes to, like, man, it just hits so much more this time around. And I definitely was in a Kate C. Wells type of crazy mood when I reread this one as well. So just a 2 on the spice scale, though. Those books aren't really about the sex with it as much. Okay, then there was a new release of Promise Me by Sarah Kate. This is her Scottish romance. This is book 2 in Sinful Manor, and this one was intense for sure. This was also a second chance romance. It was a roommates and friends to lovers. It was also a bit of cheating. Because there is a couple that it's kind of cheating, it's kind of not. It's hard to explain because there's some BDSM and sharing involved as well. But we have Declan Barclay and then Colin Shelby. And Declan, it's his family who owns Sinful Manor. And if you read the first one, which was the first one? What? Where's my book at? Where is it? It's not the Good Girl Effect. Where's my first book at? Well, I must have it in a different spot. Where is book 1? Keep Me. The castle has been passed on to Declan because the older brother doesn't want it, and him and his love have moved somewhere else, and they are using it for a wedding. And this wedding happens to be for Colin and his movie star boyfriend. They're actually both actors, but they're going to be getting married there. And now 15 years ago, Colin and Declan were roommates in uni, and they had kind of started this fling where each year they would get together and they would kind of sexually experiment together. And then when it got to the point where they would actually be together, something went wrong, and we don't fully know what that was. But now it's been 7 years since they've seen one another. So it's been 15 years since they were in school together for 4 years, and then for a few years after that, they would meet up together in the summers and fool around, and they were really in love. And then something went wrong, and it's been 7 years since they've seen one another. And now Colin is engaged to someone else, and they show up, and there's going to be a wedding, and Declan is the one kind of overseeing the wedding, and we have all these flashbacks to how they fell in love. And then, that's really it. That's what there is to say. I don't want to spoil anything. But we basically have just 1 week until the wedding happens. So this book, there was so much angst in here. There was so much, yearning in here. There was so much grief as well, because during the time that they know one another, Declan is dealing with the loss of his parents. That's a big part of this whole story for all of the Barclay kids, is losing the love that their parents had. There's also the sexual exploration and the trust and the vulnerability of that like relationship to, and then this guy that Colin has found himself engaged to, and how Colin found himself attached to this guy is just so like sad in such a way, because he's found someone who possesses him, but it's in such a different way than is healthy. And so yeah, there's just a lot going on there with that, but I really love this one. And I just think Sarah Kate was really able to tap into something with this for sure. And I thought it was really beautiful. I ended up giving this one 5 stars at the time when I finished it. Having thought on it a little longer, I don't think I would give it quite that high of a rating, having ruminated on it. But I don't know what I will lower it to as time goes on. I don't know. But it did, like, I think why I gave it such a high rating is, like, number one, this was one that I listened to. I had an audio ALC of this, and it was narrated by Will Watt and Shane East. And so when I finished it, I was sobbing because their narration was so good. But the storytelling of it, like, it needed a bit more of them together, and of how we got to, you know, because it says there's a week until the wedding, but it's that type of thing where, like, the wedding doesn't get fully called off literally until the end of this. And I feel like we needed a bit more of, like, why we were calling it off, and, like, how did Colin actually find himself engaged to this guy? We don't really go over that part enough in it. So I think, you know, this is only 300 pages, and I think we needed a bit more, because we spend a lot of time in the past. And this is one of the books that, like, I was okay with the flashbacks, because it really was beautiful how we explained their past love. But I didn't understand how Colin ended up with the guy he ended up with. And I think we needed more in then, like, how he ended up with that guy. And, like, I mean, I understood why he wanted to ditch him, but I needed to understand, like, why Colin would end up with a guy like that. And then how Declan was proving that he was healed more now, and that they could be together now. So I would probably bump this down to a 4 if I hadn't been so enamored with the narration. That happens sometimes, you guys, okay? Narration can do wonderful things. Okay, the next one that I finished, I read for a patron, and that was Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. This was one I had on my TBR actually quite a while ago. Whenever it came out, I had an arc of this, and I never got around to reading it. I feel bad about that, but I have read it now. I annotated it and already shipped it off to a patron. But this one was very sweet. This was a very soft, sweet book. This is actually I don't want to say like later in life. That sounds so weird, but it is like, you know, a middle life romance, and a second chance at love kind of thing. Not a second chance like with them together, but just like second chance love for the both of them. This also has coming to know your sexuality type of thing. Like, we have a bisexual character who is also what did he kind of settle on? I think he's like bisexual, but also kind of like ace, because he really falls in love with the person as well. It was really beautiful in that way. But we have a 50-year-old hero and a 48-year-old heroine who is now a divorcee and a single mom. Her son is in college. They're both gamers. They actually first meet playing a game online, and then they end up meeting through someone in person. And it was really cute how they meet, because they've been talking online, playing on the same like team online. And then the hero actually gets like injured, and the heroine is I think she's bringing over some food, and she thinks the guy she's been talking to is like 24, because he mentions like living with his mom, and like he had been helping take care of his mom, who is elderly. And she's thinking someone her son's age, and he's thinking because she got because again, they know like each other, like they know each other through real life, but they don't know how. and she's connected with his mom somehow. So he actually thinks she's like an old woman who's also into video games, which he thinks is really cool. But he thinks she's like 75 or 80. And so when she brings out, and she's offering to bring him over some food. So she thinks she's going to see like a kid basically. And he thinks it's going to be this elderly woman who's like bringing him some soup or something after I think it's his like foot he hurt or whatever. And it ends up being, they didn't like know each other. So this isn't a case of like she'd been super rude to him in person or whatever. They had only briefly seen one another. They like crossed paths at an event, but they had like, people know each other who know them. And then they had met through this online thing. And so they'd been chatting through the game for quite a while. So she brings him over some soup and they meet, and they're attracted to one another. But they both are more looking for a friend than for anything else. And again, because of his sexuality, he isn't like immediately attracted to anyone or anything. But he is kind of looking for someone to be a date for a wedding. He doesn't bring that up to her right away. But because he's made this kind of like bet with his mother, who is being very stubborn about her end of life care, which his mom isn't like at end of life care, but she refuses to come up with a finalized will or like plans for her end of life care, and has said if he gets a date for his cousin's wedding, then she'll look into that. So she's kind of made this bargain with him, and he hasn't dated anyone in a long time, not since his last, his broken engagement. She actually married his brother. And that was really devastating for him. And I won't spoil like how that went sour, but his sister-in-law, is a real bitch for why she broke up with him. And it does have to do with, I won't say how she found out, but it does have to do with his bisexuality and how she felt about that and things. And it really sucks. But yeah, so this is, Maggie and Aiden, and I thought they were very sweet, and this was a really sweet couple. And she's really grumpy, and she also becomes very protective over him, and they're just very sweet. So this was a lovely story. I was glad I finally read this one, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. But it was also very slow moving, and I don't just mean the romance part. I knew that was how that was going to be because of his sexuality and because of where they were in life. I was fine with that kind of slow build. Like, that was nice. I also just felt like for it being called role playing, I mean, I don't know. I guess I understand why that wasn't a part of like it sexually or anything, but they also didn't do that much of the video game stuff once they knew one another. I thought there would be more of that, of them playing together and stuff, and there just wasn't. It felt like that was only how they met, and then we totally dropped all the video game stuff. And so I don't know, like I loved the beginning and them playing together, and there was some really fun stuff of their game chats. Like there was just a lot I really liked. And yeah, I loved that he's 50 and she was 48. And yeah, and then I loved the wedding and when she ends up going with him and like all of that, like how she like there's a lot to like, but it also just felt like I was missing some stuff because it was a decently length book and there were parts that were just very dull, and I just wanted more from it. Like it was just very ho-hum, and it will be very forgettable. Like this will be a very forgettable story for me is the thing. Like the only real cases, like I will find opportunities to recommend this for characters who are over 40. I would recommend this. And characters who are like gamers, like I would recommend it for that. And of course the like, you know, ace representation. Again, I'm pretty sure it's ace representation. And bisexuality, like I recommend it for those, but yeah, otherwise it's kind of forgettable. So we'll move along with there. I give it a 3.5 star, 1.5 on the spice scale. Okay, then there was Sap and Secrets, and this was the beginning of a new series. I think it's called like Maple something by Daphne Elliott. And man, people were hard on this one for the heroine. I'll just tell you that right now. If you look up the reviews for this, woo, people didn't like this. And like, I understand, but also you guys know, sometimes I really like the bitchy heroines. I like the tough heroines to love. And I really kind of understood it for part of her. But this book started with something that I really enjoyed. So this was a surprise baby, but even more so, this was a surprise birth, basically. Okay, so this one begins with Evie going into labor. And the pitch of this one, why I signed up for this, which this was an ALC for me, narrated in duet format by Connor Crace and Vanessa Edwin. Loved it. I got this one through Ear Candy promo. Love them. I get all of like Daphne Elliott's from them. Loved it. But the pitch for this one, because I've been trying to pull back and not do quite as many arcs and stuff and ALCs, and Daphne Elliott was one of the authors that I liked her, but they've all just been kind of like okay, like they've all been kind of like 4-star reads. So the authors where they've all been kind of 4 stars, I've been trying to like, okay, do I need to sign up for the ALCs, right? Like we can pull back from those ones, right? But the pitch for this one was she is pregnant and doesn't know it until she goes into labor. So it was one of those, I didn't know I was pregnant, right? And if you are a child who saw like old school TLC, the Learning Channel, back in the day, you maybe have come across the show I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, and either thought it was ridiculous but also watched every single episode with your mom, and that was me. Okay, me and my mom watched every single episode of that and are like, how is this possible? We don't believe it, but also like it happens. Okay. And that was the case of this. And it also is believable in some aspects because our heroine in this case, this was also rep for PCOS. Our heroine was told she'd had infertility. I think she's like 32. I can't remember. She was right around her 30s. So it's not like she was old, but she didn't use protection or hadn't been using that because she wasn't having regular periods and she had infertility issues, and so really didn't think it was an issue. And then also when they hooked up, they were both pretty drunk when they had, and so didn't really think it was an issue. And then when she wasn't having her periods and didn't, the symptoms of pregnancy just kind of fit in with other things, and she, was already a, plus size heroine, the symptoms were all just normal things for her, right? Which I just related with so much. I have PCOS myself, and irregular periods, uncomfortableness, breast tenderness, like those things all come with that. And I'm not having sex with anyone, right? So how would you know that? And so, but our hero, he is a paramedic. So again, that was the pitch for this one, is that she didn't know she was pregnant until he shows up and tells her so. So he's the one who tells her she's having a baby. And then when he says, can I call someone for you? Because again, he knows he has had sex with her. But when she says, you're the father, he does believe her, but he's also like, are you sure? Like, whoa. And when he finishes his day, he goes back to visit her again at the hospital, to double check. He's like, are you serious? And she's like, I know you may not believe me. And he's like, I'm really not like doubting you. I'm just, flummoxed. And she, again, some people are like hard on her. I don't think she gives him an overly hard time for this, because obviously she's surprised too, right? And who wouldn't be shocked about that, And so I think he takes it with a lot of grace. I really think he does. And the way he handles it. And, she's like, if you need a paternity test, and he's like, no, I believe you. And she's like, I haven't slept with anyone else in over a year. I don't have time to. It was only you and that night after blah, blah, blah. And now they have a baby. And he goes, of course, all in right away. But this is where I think people don't like her, because she becomes very like possessive about all of this, whereas he goes all in on it. Okay. Now he does work long shifts. He'll have either 12 or 24-hour shifts, being a paramedic, being on shift and everything. And he doesn't want to push, whereas his family wants him to, particularly his cousin, who's the mayor, wants him to get a paternity test and wants him to demand his rights more. And he's like, no, I don't want to pressure her. She's feeling very overwhelmed. He's like, I want her to let me be involved as much as I can. I want to be a dad. I want to be there, but I'm not going to try to scare her or force anything. And she does allow him to be around. And eventually he starts basically like camping out literally in a tent whenever he's not on duty so that he can be there for the little things, because she's very overwhelmed by it. And she is very resistant to him for a lot. But, you know, you'll start to learn what her trauma is and why she doesn't want to trust anyone to be there for her. And I think he does a beautiful job of winning her over and only getting impatient with her when it's time to it. So that might not be good enough for some people, but I appreciated that. And she's a woman who's had to really depend on her own, and having this baby come absolutely out of nowhere with someone that you would have not planned to have it, and you don't even have the 9 months work up towards it, literally went from 0 to the baby's here today. And then having a guy who has a full-on family who just wants to absolutely be there for everything. Like, I can't even imagine it. But I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. The narration was excellent. The thing why I didn't give this one 5 stars. So this is where, for this one, and this is something with Daphne Elliott, why, like I said, I wasn't quite going to keep going with hers, and I might not go with the next one. We'll see what the pitch for that one is because this has some suspense in it, and there was like a murder we were trying to solve. Like, that's why he was super busy on the day that, surprise, she's having a baby, is because there was a murder that happened. There was a suspense plot also happening with this surprise baby going on, and I couldn't give two shits from a cow's butt about what the suspense plot was in this. And I remember with the other series too, Daphne Elliott adds suspense in. That's often my case with the small town romance. You guys know this. Like, literally, unless it is Claire Kingsley who builds the suspense in so well, like, that's what she writes now, is like romantic suspense. Like, she's leaned more into the suspense, but because she's such a romance author in her bones, I think her romances are still really good, but she leans more into the suspense than the romance. I like that, how she balances them, because you know that's what you're getting. Whereas in ones like this, I just didn't care about the suspense plot. I wanted more time, like, building stuff with them. So that's why I took only a 0.5 star off, though, so I could keep it out of 5, because I just loved the idea. The pitch sold me on it, and I loved it that she didn't know she was pregnant till he tells her. So that was great. And again, very nostalgic for me of times watching I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant with my mom. So I loved it. It won't be for everyone. And again, the heroine will probably annoy some people. That was Evie and Jasper. She probably won't be for everyone, but I feel like she was well written, and I understood her heart and where it was coming from. And she so desperately wants to be such a good mom. And Jasper is such a great dad. Like, oh, he just wants to be there for the little boy so much. Like, they're just so, like, they just went all in, and his family did, and her friends did. So I was okay with it. But she was frustrating sometimes. So just know that going in, and you'll have to decide if her damage worked for you. So, all right. Then we had another reread to mention briefly. We had Wild for You by Kristen Proby. Annotated this one for one of my patrons. This is the first book in the wilds of Montana, which was my reboot for me for Kristen Proby, which I loved revisiting this one. This was the one that roped me in. Great pun for me. Look at me. I'm great. I had only read a few books by her, and this new series came around, and I was in the mood for cowboy romance. Like, this was the one that really kicked me off, you guys. It really did. When I look back, because I read this one like not long after it came out in 2023, I hadn't really read anything else yet that was doing the cowboy single dad. Like, I think I'd only really read Elsie Silver stuff, and then this series came along. So this was really fun to revisit. Because yeah, this one is Remington Wild, and he has the 2 kids, and it starts with the heartbreaking where the mom has died right after his little girl is born. So he has a little boy already, and his little girl is born. And then we skip ahead 5 years, and he has a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And then we have Erin Montgomery, who, you know, this is based on Kristen Proby's whole world, right? Like, she has all her Seattle books, which I don't know if you saw this, but the Come Away With Me book in her Seattle series is getting a spinoff with, or not a spinoff, is getting an adaptation with the romance TV channel or whatever. I just forgot what it's called. I forgot what it's called, but the romance streaming service, whatever. But Erin happens to be staying in Bitterroot Valley and working with Remington's sister at the coffee shop. And she's from a super famous family. Her father is a quarterback or whatever, or was, I don't know, but he's like a billionaire, and she is staying in this small town. And he ends up needing a nanny, and she applies for that. And then it's a romance between them. There's also a suspense plot, but yeah, because she's had a stalker in the past, seems to have followed her to this area. This was sweet. They are spicy together. It's grumpy sunshine. It's not trying to be much more than it is, okay? It's all the honesty there. It's not trying to be much more than it is, okay? But this was still fun. The Bitterroot Valley beginnings were with this one, and so I kept it at the 4.5 star that it was at. I love his kids. I love his family. I love her dad, her family. And yeah, it was great. So I kept this at the 4.5 that I have had it at before. Okay, then I had 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, and this is one of the books for Rake Appreciation Society. So one of the things that happened while I was gone, we were supposed to have Rake Appreciation Society this last Wednesday, and I actually asked Crystal if we could move it. It ended up being good. She needed it moved as well. I just, after my grandma's and grandpa's event and trying to catch up on everything, there was no way I was going to finish both of our books. I haven't even started A Kingdom of Dreams yet, unfortunately. So book club has moved to March 4th, okay? But I started the audiobook for this and did finish it. So I'm not going to talk about this yet because we haven't had book club yet. But that will be March 4th. So we will be talking about 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, which I am looking forward to talking about, so I won't talk any. Then there was The Return by Noelle Adams, which of course I read for work. And this was a fun little one to read. So I haven't read any of the ones in this series by her because of course Noelle has 100 effing books to get through. So this is book 1 in the Second Chance Flower Shop is what it's called. And so as you can guess by the series title, this will be a bunch of different second chances. So there's this small town and there's this girl gang. And for this one, we have Rhea and we have Rhea. I'm not quite sure. I haven't heard it said out loud yet. But we have Rhea and Jacob. And in this one, Jacob has come back to town. His grandfather is dying. And from what I could tell, Jacob's grandfather actually owned a bunch of the places in town. And Jacob will either be kind of fixing some of these places up or he'll be selling them. I'm not sure. But Jacob and Rhea were high school sweethearts. They actually dated for a few years in high school. They lost their virginity to each other. And literally right after they lost their virginity to each other, Jacob's grandfather kicked him out. And instead of trying to stick around and find something in town, Jacob left town. And he's been gone for 8 years. And so he's back because his grandfather is dying. And he's, going to be there to, he's being left everything from his grandfather. And his grandfather is also kind of trying to make amends for how things went. But Rhea is just trying to stay out of Jacob's way. She doesn't want to see him. She's still very hurt over, what she feels is that he was with her and then just dumped her after getting what he wanted, which of course that's not how it was. But he also never tried to reach out to her or explain anything. He just left, so she has no idea though what he was going through or any of those things. And so, yeah, this was really beautiful, actually, in more ways than I was expecting for that. And it's pretty short, though. This was only novella length. And it did pack a big punch, though. I mean, especially some of the scenes between Jacob and his grandfather, who, yeah, his grandfather does pass away in this short little novella. But we also get introduced to all of Rhea's girl gang, who is what the whole series will be about. So yeah, but it had some great moments too, and seeing how Jacob explains why he left and what led him not to explain what was going on, and then, you know, can they have a future together, and everything like that. So yeah, this is available for reading now, and of course I don't rate the books that I read for work for her, but I did do a content pull for this one, and it was a nice little like refresher after or a little refreshing one to read after 9 rules and everything. So then the last one that is a fictional book that is one you can buy or read somewhere. Okay. I finished up yesterday Secrets and Sin by Sherry Champagne. Okay. So this was book 2 in, actually, what is the like series name? Is it Secrets of Sin? Or no, Secrets and Sin is the book name. Can't remember the series title, but this is a historical romance, and Sherry Champagne is a small indie author, and I got this one from Must Love Audio. This was an ALC from them, and so this was a duet narration by Shane East and Zara Hampton Brown, and this was a couple years ago at this point. I think it was one of the earlier ALCs that I got from them. And yeah, Sherry Champagne is a very small historical romance author, and this was a suspense one, and very sexy, but also a really good like mystery going on, and quite intense. Like, this is one of those that I feel like it was just very well planned out as well. And it's really hard to set up, actually, in a quick little blurb here. But this one, we'll say this way. This involves Mariah and Jasper. And Mariah, she is a bit of a spinster. She also has a undercover persona where she will dress as a man named Duncan, and she works for a newspaper, and she's also a Bow Street runner. The series is called Bow Street Runner. That's what they're called, where they also will solve some crimes, and there's some women and men who will go undercover in different places and solve these crimes. And we have Jasper, who's in need of some help because his cousin escaped the noose. His cousin was supposed to be put to death for like treason or for something that he'd done, but he escaped, and he's attempting to kill Jasper. And Mariah is a part of the Bow Street Runners who are trying to stop him. Also, Mariah, her parents are trying to force her to get married or else be her aunt's companion. And Mariah just really doesn't want to do that, because not only does she have her other persona as Duncan that would be in danger, you know, if she was forced to move away and be her aunt's companion, she wouldn't be able to also still be Duncan, where she writes for a newspaper and writes books and stuff. But she actually has a brother who is a war veteran and who has Tourette's. And her parents had him put in the insane asylum because he had Tourette's, and they didn't understand Tourette's then. And she had actually freed him from there and is keeping him and taking care of him. And he is also gay as well. And so that's another reason that they didn't care for him at all. And basically had disowned him and put him in Bedlam. And so there's a lot on the line for her. So she's hoping to find a husband who she can kind of placate and keep happy, and also keep her other persona as Duncan then. And so Jasper, who actually is the older brother of, so that's also how they're connected, is Jasper, his sister is friends with Mariah, and I believe that's what the first book was about. So this drama does kind of carry over from the first one. So I do believe you want to read the first one first with this to get the full thing of it. So that's how they already kind of know of one another. And so to help her be able to investigate his case along with other Bow Street runners and to get her parents off of trying to force her to marry someone else, they enter into a engagement, which Jasper actually like wants to marry her. And she does need to be married anyway. So it's a fake/real engagement as well. So I ended up, as I said, really enjoying this. And that made me excited because I remembered then the first one, when I looked it up, was why I signed up for this. We had signed up for this and then it got delayed. So I really had forgotten why I'd signed up for this one when we finally got it. And not a lot of people had signed up for it. Like, not a lot of people have reviewed these books. Not a lot of people have read Sherry Champagne. And so I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It was a 2.5 on the spice scale. And I thought it was a really, like I said, the mystery and the suspense of this one was very good because we do get POVs from the villain. And he's a bad dude. And the things he's trying to do to Jasper and Mariah and the family is like, he's pretty fucked up and clever. Like, this isn't just some dumb villain. Like, he has a serious vendetta and he hates his cousins and what he wants to do to them is awful. So I do really recommend it. I don't know, it almost gave me like Loretta Chase vibes from, you know, if you remember like Mr. Impossible or something like that, which is a dash of queerness in it too, because the way that Sherry Champagne kind of writes how Mariah likes to switch between the personas of Duncan and Mariah, I think she sees it as a little bit of like gender fluidity in how she writes it and explains it in her author's note too. So, but if you don't want to see it that way, that's up to you. I don't think it was overly distracting or anything once you're like reading it. And when I'd finished it and was reflecting on it, I thought it was really well done. And that's always nice to see. Okay, so those are all of the fictional books that I read. Now, as I said, we're an hour in. I'm going to now go through the fanfics that I read. So if you have no interest in those, have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. But I still have 8 things to talk about that were all the fics because I had some wonderful ones. So I'm going to take another drink and settle back in because we probably got another. So the fics that I read. There was Down and Out, literally, by Goldfish 228. And this fic was, oh, I think I should pull up the other, let me pull up the other one. Because a lot of these, you know what happens with fanfics, if you read fics, is that some of them can start to blur together when you read down a certain, track, and so they can start to blur together. So let me pull up. So Down and Out, literally, was so good. I loved this fic so much. And I know that I don't like rate the fics, but this week there were, let me see, there were like 2 particularly that were like favorites, and this was one of them. Okay, this was one of them that was like a favorite. So this one involved, what if when Shane got hit, he actually became partially like paralyzed when he got hit. And so, of course, this has a HEA, let me say that. But what if when he got the hit from Cliff Marlowe, he was actually really hurt? And so that's what happens on this one. It wasn't a super long fic either. I mean, I think it was like 140 pages or so. But yeah, this one was so good. So yeah, let me read the little blurb, sorry. So This is a play from the line in heated rivalry following Shane's injury, where in his head, Shane is thinking, oh God, what if I'm not okay? What if I never walk again? So it was just that one line. And what happens if, like, that's what he thought? And so it has that happening. And it was so powerful because Hayden and Ilya really, like, step in and are both really there for this. And then it goes through kind of the beginning of this, and I just found this, I don't want to get into all of this, I don't want to cry about this. This was just really particularly moving for me personally, because if you're one of my patrons, I shared about this last September, my high school math teacher, who I love as a friend now, he fell from his homemade zip line at home and was paralyzed from his C5 and 6 down. So he is paraplegic now, almost could have been a quadriplegic. Okay, it is awful. And his life is never going to be the same. He can't walk on his own, and he may never. Things are still healing, and they are, 6 months out from this. They've had to move to Colorado for special treatment. Like, it's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. It's wild. And so parts of this story where we get POVs from Shane, where seeing his body change and losing his athletic body and needing a catheter and having this, man who loves him see him, need to help him with, like, hygiene and things like that, and feeling humiliated in those things. And now him being like, we were just having fun, and now are you sure you want to be here for, like, these type of things? And, like, all that stuff is just so, like, heavy, but it's also so real. And it leads to some absolutely tender and beautiful things. And then leading all the way up to, there's a scene in here where there's a class they go to that is about, like, intimacy for partially paralyzed people. And Shane, like, not wanting Ilya to be too, like, gentle with him because he just wants to be able to have something that feels normal. And then Shane gets a look at Ilya's face and sees how absolutely terrified Ilya is of causing Shane any pain, because, when they have sex normally, it's just absolute passion, and Ilya is afraid of, like, oh my God, I could paralyze him more if I do this one thing wrong, or this or that, or whatever happens, or something like that. And so this fic is just so beautiful. I loved it so much. I cried a couple of times, but it absolutely has a happily ever after. I know I just made it sound really, really grim, and you definitely will probably cry a couple of times, and it probably won't be for everyone, but I love this. And in the future, whenever I will do like romance recs that involve disability, I will be pulling this one up, because that is what this one is about. And it was so well done, and it's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. And I have another one having to do with injury in my list today, but oh my God, I cried, and it absolutely has an HEA, and it's not too long, so it doesn't, like, draw you through the pain forever and ever, which, it's so funny with some of these fics, because some of them I just want them to go on forever. And then I think of some of the Harry Potter fics I've read that are literally 1,000+ pages. And I know that some fics, it doesn't matter how long they are, because you'll still want them to be even longer. So I'm always just in awe of the economy of words that some people use, and I still want them to do even more. So, sometimes it's never enough. Okay. Love that one. Then there was My Moon, My Man. There was My Moon, My Men. And this was just a quickie little one. And I know not everyone will want this one. This was just a random one that, I like to get a little freaky. This was probably the freakiest one I read. Not because of anything too wild, but this is actually one in which Shane gets a boyfriend. like Ilya and Shane are together, and it doesn't involve cheating because Ilya is actually the one who encourages Shane to do this. It's very interesting how it plays out. This is a shorter fic, but there's this new guy who joins the Metros, and Ilya picks up on something on the ice one day when they're actually playing against each other. Boston and Montreal are playing against each other, and Ilya notices that Shane has talked about this new guy a little bit, and he's like, do you think he's hot? I think he's hot. You should, I think he's checking you out. And Shane is like, why are you testing me? Why are you doing this? Why are you asking me these questions? And Ilya's like, this isn't a test. He's like, you can be into this guy, like you can be into whatever, like see what you think. And so it ends up the very first time sometime is that Sam comes over. Sam is the name of this original character who gets added in, and Shane and Sam have sex and Ilya watches. So Ilya, literally it's a cuck fantasy kind of for Ilya but also for Shane, and so Shane actually tops Sam and Ilya watches it. And then eventually though, like the next day, Shane and Sam are fooling around, and Ilya is like wants to join in, and Shane like freaks out because to him he doesn't want Ilya with anyone else. And so then we have to have a boundaries conversation, and it becomes kind of a like thing where like Sam is Shane's boyfriend but Ilya is not Sam's boyfriend, and they're in kind of this one of those things. So it was an interesting fic. It was okay. Not my favorite thing. Probably won't read those type of fics again. But literally it was a 70-page thing. I like to try new things. People were recommending it in one. And I even had someone, because I've shared on my Instagram, I shared this post with Hollanov Fics, and it went nuts, right? And whenever you have a post kind of go mini viral, you get people who just freak out over things, and they're like, who would want to read them with anyone else? And I'm like, it's a fic. Like, I just tried it. I have one on my radar. That's Ilya, Shane, and Scott. I have one on mine that is Ilya and Shane and Scott and Kip have a thing. Like, there are some that you just try. Okay, that is how fic stuff happens, right? But it is funny when people get so possessive because, like, when it's... Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. This is such a long thing. But we're in the fic portion of the video, so I can talk more about this. When I read Dramini fanfic, or you're reading HP fanfic, where pretty much everything's already made up, because you're reading all these couples that don't exist anyway. So nobody really gets that possessive over couples because they're all made up anyway. You're not really, once you're reading HP fanfic, it's all canon divergence, right? I mean, fic is all canon divergence anyway. Like, none of it is real anyway. You know what I mean? So I'm just so curious by where other people's minds go, like where their plot bunnies go, that they write stuff, And I mean, you're going to see that with a few of these others. And especially, like, I don't generally like to really read one shot. Like, I like to get in when people have thought of a full story. So I don't read a lot of ones that are one shots. I don't tend to read ones that are under 20K words. I don't. There's a couple that I have because I really like the idea of a scene or a particular thing. And again, I have a couple like that I'm about to share because I want that scene so bad. And if the only one who's written it, they've only written a 10,000 word thing on it, and that's all I can have, I will read it. But in general, I want to read a story someone's written with multiple chapters where they thought the thing out, and like I can read the whole thing. But when it's an established pairing and people are writing you more, people get just as possessive as they do over whatever. So for Shane and Ilya to be an established couple, and if you do any like you can do AUs, like write them, people are writing, you know, the Omegaverse, they're writing vampire werewolf stuff, they're writing the mafia stuff I've read, but you add in Scott, or you or you add in a made up other character, and the people were like angry at me, and I'm like, well, A, I didn't write it, but also B, it's fic as it is. Like, don't read fic if you don't want to read made up stuff. Like, it's already made up, my loves. Like, it's already fake, and the points don't matter. So, but anyway, so that one was a little wild, and if you can't handle it, don't read it. But I thought it was interesting, and also just in general, I haven't read any relationships like that outside of like, I mean, a Why Choose maybe. But in general, that's usually where it's like a female and males. And so I understand why the males don't want to be together. But having like, you know, in that case, I guess Shane's kind of like, I guess Shane's kind of like the fulcrum point of the relationship. And then, but it's also weird because it's not that Ilya isn't attracted to Sam and Sam's not attracted to Ilya. It's because Shane is like, it affects my relationship with Ilya. So it was interesting. And that person who wrote that fic, the way their brain decided to do it, I thought it was interesting. But I wouldn't read that type of thing again, is the point. Okay, then this will be real easy to say. I actually reread a fic because there was one fic that like, I just couldn't scratch it out of my brain, and I wanted to read it again. And so I won't have to talk about this one again because I just read this one at the, when did I read this one? Well, I guess I read it 1 month ago, actually. I reread That's All It Takes by Kings Kindly, which that is the fic where Ilya has the plane crash, and they all survive, basically. Well, one person dies, but Shane ends up like telling his parents and Hayden that he loves Ilya, but the plane crashes and everyone's okay, and it kind of pushes them to admit their feelings much earlier because the plane crashed. I just had an itch for that one again, and so I reread a fic, which that doesn't always happen, but I reread that fic. Then I read Slipfast. This one was weird, you guys. This one was weird. I mean, they're all weird, right? So this was Slipfast. Slipfast is a kind of fantasy, kind of paranormal thing. So it's this world where it's this AU where there are fated mates, and when you are, I guess there isn't a certain age where it can happen. So how do we explain this world? So the way that this goes, how do we say this? Even the fic author doesn't really know how to explain it, so it's kind of funny. But the way that it works is like most people have a fated mate, and at a certain age, there isn't any certain age that it happens, but whenever like the universe has decided who your fated mate is, the first words that your fated mate will ever speak to you will become written on your skin somewhere. And so, yes, the first words you ever speak will become written on your skin. And so when Ilya is a little boy, the words "you're supposed to smoke over there" become written on his skin. And this happens when he's very young. And so when he is in Regina, Saskatchewan, so yeah, so he was 13 years old when he got his words. They showed up. And so then he's out there smoking, and he hears the words, and he turns around, and there's Shane. And so because he knows that that's his soulmate, he doesn't speak back to Shane, which is crazy. The way this fic comes out is absolutely banonkers. Okay, how this goes. So Shane also knows what his words are, and I think his are, what are his? Let me see. His words are fuck's sake, Hollander. So that's what Shane's are. Shane's words are fuck's sake, Hollander. And what's crazy is that, so Shane knows that his are probably going to come from a hockey player, because he's like already a hockey player when he gets his words. And he knows that it's probably going to be a man, which his parents actually don't mind, because it isn't even the gay part that it's going to mind, because he's like, it's probably going to be a hockey player who's going to use my last name. So he knows that his fated mate is going to say fuck's sake, Hollander, and Ilya knows his is going to be, you are supposed to smoke over there, or something like that. And so when Ilya hears Shane say them, he doesn't speak back to him. And he goes about for the next years trying not to speak to him. So when he hears them, he doesn't talk to him. And it says like, so when he like says, I wanted to meet you, he tries to shake his hand, Ilya rubs out his cigarette and walks away. And it says he walked away before he spoke and let them both make a terrible mistake. And so the thing is, though, is that it changes the story a little bit, but they still keep running into each other. He just doesn't talk. And eventually they start texting. They still end up talking, and they even still end up fucking each other eventually without Ilya ever talking to him. And so then this becomes a case of when finally he speaks. It's that type of story where Shane is gonna know, because Shane knows how fated mates work. There's no way around this. And Shane has been speaking to him for years. And when Ilya finally speaks and says, fuck's sake, Hollander, Shane's gonna know that Ilya has known all this time that they've been fated mates, and he's kept it from him. So it's that type of story. So Slipfast was fascinating, and this one wasn't super long either, but damn, this was an angsty one, because it's like that type of story where it's like you can't get away from fate, like you can't get away from it. And like I just thought this was so, like, I thought this was really clever. And I know the fic author thinks that it was a mess, and like, sure, it wasn't perfect, but I thought this was such a clever idea. And just like so many times just like, Ilya, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You're just making it worse, just pushing it off more and more and more, because you're still falling for him, and you're falling while you know, and you're not letting Shane know. And Shane also knows he has, because that's the thing too, is when you know you have a fated mate existing, like, he's trying not to fall in love with Ilya then, because he knows he has a fated mate out there somewhere, and it's not this guy. So, you know, you're torturing him even more as he's falling in love with you, trying not, like, oh man. So that one was bonkers, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, next up, we had this really cute one. Okay, we had a cute one that, this one is actually the lowest spice rating that I've ever read. Okay, this one isn't even about the steam. This is one of the first ones ever I've read that was a teen, and actually the prologue, because this one has a prologue that you're supposed to read first. But when I tracked it, I just ended up tracking this one because it was just too much. But when you go down below, I will link both parts, because you have to read part 1, which is called Mr. Emergency Contact. You have to read that one. So you read Mr. Emergency Contact, and then the next part is Mr. Emergency Contact and the mortifying ordeal of being outed by a child, okay? And this is by by Fandom Commitment Issues, okay? And this is adorable, okay? I saw someone say this, and I read Mr. Emergency Contact on my phone because it was just a one-shot, and then when I saw that there was the like follow-up that was a like longer thing, I was like, fuck, and I downloaded it and read the whole thing instantly because I had to have it. Okay, but I'll tell you what Mr. Emergency Contact is, and then, like I said, I'll link both parts. So Mr. Emergency Contact is this little one-shot that is, it's a weird thing too, and there was some weirdness to it because of like kind of when it takes place. So this is supposed to take place like, let me see this again. So this takes place, how does this one take place? This is not a standalone. There's a larger fic that comes after it. It's canon compliant in some ways, but it definitely took liberties with the timeline. Yeah. Because when does this one take place? What does it say here? Is this after? Is this the beginning of the long game? Because I think this is supposed to be kind of like between Heated Rivalry and the long game, but like after the long game. The point is, no, it's not after the long game, but it's weird. It's weird where it takes place. I don't know, but the point is, it takes place in a point where like nobody else knows, but like Hayden's kids know enough to love Ilya and call him Uncle Ilya. Okay, that's who enough people know. Okay, is the point. Okay, Hayden's kids love Ilya and they call him Uncle Ilya. So we're at enough of that, and enough that like the charity is going and that Hayden has volunteered at the charity sometimes. So like that's enough of the setup, and that's important for what comes next because this is called Mr. Emergency Contact. Because what happens is that Ilya is at home and he gets a call, and he's at home in Ottawa, and he gets a call from Montreal. Or wait, why does it say he's in Montreal? He must be staying at Shane's is what's happening. Yeah, he's staying at Shane's because Ruby is sick, and Shane and Hayden are at practice, and Jackie is busy, and Ilya is literally the last one on the emergency contact list who's not busy. And he gets called to come pick her up from school. And the thing is, this is public enemy number one in Montreal gets called into this school to pick up this little kid, okay, who is very sick. And by the time he has picked her up and gotten her into the vehicle and went and picked up stuff from the store for her and gotten her home to Shane's apartment, everyone has seen him taking her there. And everyone knows about it, okay? And so it begins this absolutely unhinged thing that will happen in the next fic. But Mr. Emergency Contact is adorable, okay? It's adorable. And this one is mostly all in, like, it's all in Ilya's point of view. And it's just so cute because he's realizing how much he absolutely loves these kids, which he already knew he loved them, and how pissed he is that he's on this emergency contact list, but also what it means that he's trusted with these kids, and the fact that like actually he's probably better at it than like Shane would have been at it. And also, how would Shane ever be the one to be called, because he always would be with Hayden. So if Hayden wasn't free, then Shane would never be free. And Jackie was in the middle of, like, she was literally in a plane on a trip somewhere, and so like all of this stuff is happening, and Ilya's the only one who's available to go get her. And she has a fever, and she's sick, and he makes her soup, and it's so cute. And then when Hayden and Shane get home from practice and pick her up, and by the time they get her home, there are already all these rumors spinning around about why Ilya Rozanov, who's supposedly this huge enemy, why he was trusted with this sweet little girl. And so that is the prologue to Mr. Emergency Contact and a mortifying ordeal of being outed by a child, because it puts this family in a very tricky position of Hayden having to release a statement, the kids can't stop talking, the press is asking questions, and Shane and Ilya are very tired of hiding everything. And so, yeah, it just put everybody in a really weird spot. And this one is like really all for the humor. It involves a lot of panicking, but it also is just a lot of humor, and it involves the kids continuing to say stuff, you know, like they're calling Ilya Uncle Ilya at school, and it has like them saying stuff about Shane and Ilya like living together in place. So it's just hilarious. So this one's just all funny. There's really not any romance in it at all. It's just hilarious, and I just read it all in one sitting. I read Mr. Emergency Contact, and then I read the follow-up, and it was adorable, and I loved it. So yeah. Okay, next up was another one that I just read all in one sitting as well, that led me to another fic after that. I just couldn't stop with these. So this next fic is called Ilya Rozanov Gets Railed. And this fic is very interesting. I love history, you guys. I am a nosy bitch. And this one was fun in a couple of ways. Number one, this fic, I just want to tell you, this is one of the ones, this fic is only 13,000 words. It's a one-shot. Also, it was written in 2023, okay? This was written, I repeat, almost 3 years ago. Before we had a Connor Story and Hudson Williams, before we even knew there would be a show. And there are some really great author's notes at the beginning of the fic that I think are important to say. So I'm going to say them. But this fic, of course, I found it on Threads. That's where I find a lot of these fics I've been reading. And I just want to read a couple of them. And then I'll tell you like why I loved it so much. Because this fic has absolutely blown the fuck up. But I loved this fic, and it led me, as I said, to another fic that I read after it. But this one said this. This fic is from 2023. It was maybe the 200th or 300th fic under the Shane and Ilya tag. And as of January 11th of 2026, this tag has over 8,000 fics, right? So this was a very early Shane and Ilya fic. This was the first fic that was under Shane is the top and Ilya is the bottom ever. And to be honest, it's a travesty that I can't put that on my resume. Love this fic writer, who is called Glitter City, by the way, is the name of this author. I wrote this in 2023, 2 years before the TV show even was announced. I assumed that maybe someday, a decade from now, as 3,000 or 4,000 people would eventually read it. I know people have opinions about who bottoms and who tops, so besides the tag, I figured I'd make it extra clear what happens in this fic. You get it, the idea. And finally, Ilya Rozanov Gets Railed was a working title, and since I never thought of anything better, I just went with it. Although I thought a handful of people were going to read this. So yeah, it's a goofy title, and it probably doesn't do justice to it, but it covers a spectrum. And they say that because this was actually a very emotional one-shot. It really was. It really was. And both of the fics that I read this week that involve Ilya being topped by Shane, I wanted to weep while I was reading them. This one I didn't get to full crying in this one because it was shorter, but they both involve some very emotional stuff. But this one takes place a few years after the long game. And this one was just really sexy. It just involves, kind of what you'd think it would be, with Ilya being really stressed, and he asks Shane if he would fuck him, and just kind of, asks him if he would be interested in it. And I just kind of like how it comes about. Where Ilya is just kind of like, I want you to do that. And Shane is like, well, you weren't a fan of it. And he's like, I'm a big fan of your dick. And sorry, it starts off really funny, but he's also just like, it's something that I think I want to try with you. And I think it would really help me get out of my head sometime. And that it would be a new type of closeness for the two of us. So this one, like I said, I think that the fic author, this isn't just some like kink thing of wanting to see a role reversal, that I think it's not about a fetish thing. It's not about just because we haven't seen it of people wanting it. Whereas I think, and I'm not putting this on everyone, I think a lot of people who have now seen the show go to fanfic and like that's what they're wanting to when they're looking for that. I'm not placing that on everyone. I'm not saying that. But I think that sometimes what they're wanting when they want that is because they're like, well, why isn't everyone verse? Or why can't it be this way? Like that's what they're wanting when they go look for that. And I think this fic author really gets it when they bring that up. So I really enjoyed this one. Now I have two more to talk about. But let me just talk about the other one where he also bottoms, because I looked it up after I read this one, even though I read another one in between. So then the other one that I read last night, I did not mean to read last night. But based off of the author's note that was left for this, like I said, where the fic author said this was the very first top Shane, bottom Ilya fic that was, I was like, ooh, how many are there? And they're right, there's still not a lot of them. Most of them are one shots. Most of them are just one scene where it happens. They're just a little kinky flash in the pan. That's literally all that they are. I looked up some that were all, I wanted to see how many were over 10,000 words. And there are literally only like 100 of them. That's it still, which is fine. Like people are following what the content, and also ones that are completed, by the way. Sorry, I was looking up ones that were completed. There are plenty that are in the works, so hopefully there'll be more still. But I found a couple more I wanted to read. And one of these was So Much of Living is Unknown by Dandelion Club. Now this one had two things in it that I wanted. And it was kind of great because even the fic author said the same thing, that the reason why they wrote this one was for a friend who wanted it to have two things that they loved in it. Let me find it actually. Which is, where are you? Which was Ilya being injured and Ilya bottoming. And so that is what this one is. He ends up getting injured really badly, where he's going to be out for the next like 12 weeks, which ends up being the rest of the season, which spirals his depression really badly. And Shane is still in, and so he's not able to spend much time with him. And they're still, so this takes place kind of, not a lot of people know about them yet. I think it's supposed to be kind of like, it's not fully in the long game territory yet. And so I don't know if this fic author just didn't want to write them at all, but Shane's parents weren't involved in this at all. Like I really would have expected, honestly, like Shane's parents would have helped if we'd been more in the long game territory. So I don't think we were. But it involves like Ilya really spiraling in this one. And so eventually Shane is really trying to think of how he can best help Ilya. And he actually brings up, because it isn't just about him topping him. It actually is like Ilya isn't letting any sex happen. And Shane, as he's using his brain and trying to work through how to connect with Ilya, because Ilya keeps shutting him down, he gets to this point of like, I know physical is our connection, and Ilya keeps pushing that away, and Shane is finally like, we have to have connection somehow. And because Ilya isn't able to be dominant, and not just like dominant as in like dominant, like he can't physically be the dominant position in any of their sexual escapades, physically, because of the injury he has, Shane says, can I top you? Like, let me be in charge, because I feel like it will help us connect. And Ilya comes up with these excuses, and he actually admits that he had bottom before and it wasn't good. And Shane was like, okay, but what wasn't good about it? And Ilya admits that, well, the men before, because he does say that he had bottomed with men before, and it wasn't about me, it was only about them. And he's like, the only time I'd ever come, was with fingers, and it was when someone was paying attention with you. And he's like, well, don't you think I would be paying attention to you? Like, it would be about us. I wouldn't just be in it for me. And so they have this right in the last chapter of this fic author really has Shane, and he's like, I'm not just trying to convince you into this, like I'm begging for sex. I want you to see like what the difference would be. And also, like, no one knows you better than me. Like, and then he pulls a little bit of like, are you afraid I would be better at it than you? Then he pulls his ego in a little bit. And God, it's beautiful. Like I said, this one made me cry. Like, I absolutely cried in it. And that's what I love when healing sex. And that's one of the tags for this one. So I knew it was going to be good. The sex scene where Shane tops him is so good, and it was so well thought out, and it was beautifully handled. Just very well done. And yeah, it was beautiful. So I loved that one. This was probably my second favorite this week that I read, because there was a lot before it. Like, there's a lot of pain. His injury is a lot, and it's very isolating. And Shane's reasoning for why, like, please let me fuck you. These are the reasons why. Like, this is the connection I think it will bring us. This is a bonding thing for us. And walking through why it would be different and why it's important, not only for Ilya, but for Shane too. And of course, like, no one pays attention, like, besides Ilya, no one pays attention like Shane. Like, it's true, Ilya pays attention to everything, but Shane does too when he puts his mind into it. And then the only other one to mention briefly here is one called One Night by Merope. And this was one that I'd actually been working on for a while. I just wanted to push through, where it has them somehow like on the same flight coming back from the Sochi Olympics. Somehow, like, I guess Ilya was going to be coming back as well, which I guess we didn't think through, like, why would he need to be coming back at the same time as everybody else? But I guess he was. And they get stuck in the airport, and they end up having a fling. They're both planning to, like, break up after, and they end up having a fling and then deciding to make a go of it. So that one was all right, but I liked some other ones a lot better than I mentioned. So, okay. Anyway, there you go. I knew this would be long. If you stuck it through all the books and all the fics, you guys are the best. I appreciate you so, so much. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, make sure you've liked this video. I need to go rest my throat. Almost 2 hours of talking about that. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate y'all so much. The sun is literally going down here. Thank you for watching, my loves. Welcome to the new channel members. If you'd like to support what I do here, you can do that as easily as liking this video, commenting down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye.